sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Empower Dyslexia. I'm Rachel Chambers.
And I'm Stephen Yearout.
And we're here to help you be better partners in education, right?
Every day.
On this yeah, all the time. On this show, we try to discuss, we discuss dyslexia and related disorders, interventions, new research that's coming out, and policy at the state and federal level. We also talk to experts in the field and then people that have had personal experiences with it. So like us on Facebook. We'd truly, truly, truly appreciate it. And subscribe to our YouTube channell.
Well, look at all those new apps
great.
that we've added there, including iHeartRadio.
I know, that's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this live, you're watching it on either YouTube or Facebook Live, and then you can pick us up on all of our favorite apps, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes.
Alexa.
I said iTunes, Alexa, iHeart.
All of them.
All of them.
All of your YouTube.
One.
Yeah. And guys, I kind of set a new goal for us. We have, I think, about 1,300 likes on Facebook. I think I would really like for us to get to 1,500 by the end of October, by Halloween. What do you think?
I say we shoot for 2,000.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So 2,000 guys. He's always pushing the limit. So if you guys could like us, we'd really, really appreciate it. It's going to help us get sponsors down the road or more sponsors.
Well, I mean, it helps us bring this content and make sure that we're bringing better and better guests and, developing this show because we've said it before, this show is not about us. No. This show is actually our viewers. I mean, this is all for our viewers. Everybody that's out there that is dealing with dyslexia, whether it's the parent or the child, you are Empower Dyslexia. It's not Rachel and Stephen. It's, we're all in this as a team. Yeah. Yeah. So we're happy to have this platform to do and to bring you guys as much information as we can find out there. And also, if you know somebody that you think is really great and has helped you and your child or you as an adult, let us know, and we may interview them for the show. Yeah, we're always looking for... We're always looking. We're like... ideas for shows, guests to come on. We always say that we want to bring the most relevant information so our viewers can hear what they normally wouldn't hear. Right. Or what they don't even know. Yeah, they don't know. Because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And gosh, we have learned so much this year by doing the show. And I learned that I didn't know. Oh, wow. Me too. So today, our topic, because we've had people ask us about dysgraphia, and this is another one of the related disorders of dyslexia, and we're going to be talking about dyscalculia. Dyscalculia. Yeah. I believe that's how you say it. Dyscalculia. My tongue always trips over the letters of that word. It's really difficult for me. Or if you say it like I say it, I just like to call it Count Chocula. I don't know why I always think of Count Chocula when I think of dyscalculia, but I do. That's how I... Now I'm picturing the cereal box. Yep. Every time I hear dyscalculia, I see the Count Chocula come running across. That's so funny. That's your visual imagery. That's my visual. Right there. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about dyslexia and dyscalculia.
and what the difference is. And we have our guest on today is a friend that we met while we were in DC doing the dyslexia rally over the summer. And her name is Adrianne Meldrum, and she is coming all the way, or she lives all the way in Idaho. Adrianne is the founder and owner of Math for Middles, which is an online math tutoring center focused on serving students with the gifts of dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. She is a certified teacher and has been tutoring students since 2006. She received multisensory math training from Marilyn, Zecher, and is close to achieving her trainer status. Adrienne is married and has 3 boys, and she lives in Boise, Idaho, where she enjoys the outdoors. Currently, she is a graduate student at Bridges Academy, working towards her Master's of Cognitive Diversity in Education. So welcome to our show, Adrienne. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm thankful that you said yes to being on the show. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I'm happy I could be part of the movement.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to see what you have to say, or hear what you have to say. I know we've already talked to you a little bit about this, of course, during our show prep, but to share what you have to say. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, you summed up the generalities, so I won't bore you with more about that. But I'm really passionate about the work that I do. I've been tutoring for a long time. And way back when I first started, there was always these kids that everything I knew how to do, everything I was trained to do in school, didn't necessarily apply here in this case. And that just didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well, so I head down this path of deep research of what actually works. And I discovered that dyslexia affects your ability to do math significantly. And then there's dyscalculia and ADHD. And I started learning about those methods that are truly effective for these students, which is multisensory math, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But I decided a few years ago to go all in on Math for Middles, taking it online, because most communities do not have this available to them. You're not going to find it in big box tutoring. Big box tutoring companies are more the same. This is really specialized and specific to the students that have different learning preferences and different brain wiring.
Mm-hmm. So tell us the difference between dyslexia and dyscalculia.
Yeah,
I said it right that time.
That is one hot debate that we have in my graduate program right now. Dyslexia really impacts a lot of different parts of everyone's lives. And it's difficult to tease out, when is it dysgraphia, when is it dyscalculia. Sometimes the students have both. And so I thought it would be helpful just to mention some basic definitions, and then I'll go from there. So as you know, dyslexia is a difficulty with decoding words. They may exhibit trouble with rhyming. Fluency is a problem, poor spelling. It could be like omission of certain words like is and the, of, and those kinds of words get skipped over. Whereas dyscalculia affects the ability to understand, learn, and perform math, and understanding those number-based operations. So those are they're 2 different things, right? Dyscalculia, it relies with the math part of the brain, and then dyslexia affects the language part. So, but I want to make it clear, because we talked about this in the pre-show conversation, that not all math difficulties are dyscalculia. There are other things that affect math. So I mentioned that disorders like dyslexia or visual and auditory processing disorder or ADHD also impact a child's ability to do math. And I don't think there's as many people talking about that. And I know there's a tendency to just give children the dyscalculia label so that they can get accommodations, which I'm not against. I think that's great. They do need accommodations. But true dyscalculia is actually really rare. So I think that's important for us to talk about here. And so I mentioned at the beginning with that definition of dyslexia that students tend to omit those words like is and of when reading. So in math, though, those words are really important when we're solving math problems. So if they're omitting the word is, that's problematic because it means equal. Or the word of means to take a part of or to take a piece of. And so these are some of the examples of how the language piece of dyslexia can affect the math part. and their ability to do those calculations and to understand the word problems.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. I agree. So necessarily the child may have dyslexia, and may be really struggling in math as well, but it's just more of a not kind of glossing over to some of those words that are so critical in math.
Absolutely.
Just to clarify, you're not saying dyslexia is also math issues, but
I'm saying that
because you have decoding, comprehension, short-term memory, recall, those type of things that come along with dyslexia, it also affects math.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Just want to make sure that our viewers understand that, and that's what you're saying, not that because you're dyslexic now you're having math issues also.
So
that's true.
Where my brain goes is like, okay, so because I don't quite have a handle on the dyscalculia, I can't even say it, but could you again tell us a little bit more about that? I know you said it was rare.
Sure.
So what does a student kind of look like when they do have, like, what are some of those red flags, or how does it present, or is there a special test that you do to see if that's the issue?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so some of the telltale signs that it might be dyscalculia, and I want to preface this with, you should always have a professional help you tease this out. Mm-hmm. But obviously, some of the issues that are common to both students with dyslexia and issues with dyscalculia, they struggle to obtain their math facts. And I'm talking about addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, all four. Not just the multiplication. I think most people tend to think of, those math facts of multiplication, that's where things fell apart for us. But they're struggling to acquire all of them. Mm-hmm. A student with dyscalculia is going to have a difficult time with estimating. The idea of magnitude and quantity is really foreign to them. They don't really grasp that 1,000 is a lot and 1,000,000 would be huge. And also in the reverse, that microscopically fractional parts of a number are really small. And so they have a difficult time estimating how much this quantity is. You might see that this student particularly struggles with their math homework assignments and their tests. It's taking them longer. You're seeing lots of finger counting, even at the older ages, maybe even a high schooler counting on their fingers. That's a sign that there's something going on there with the dyscalculia. And also a big telltale is telling time, calendar skills. They might get confused about which day of the week it is, or the months of the year that they are cyclical, that they happen again and again, or that they struggle with calculating money and understanding their quantities and their parts, and they struggle if they're in the checkout line paying. Mm-hmm. And then it's similar to dyslexia in that there's a large gap between their aptitude and their IQ. And so it's similar in that way that the curve might be really high because they have a high IQ, but yet their ability to do math is really low. So it's similar in that way. So a professional is going to want to help you tease that out. Which one is it? And it could be they have both. It could be they have just dyscalculia. So you asked me, well, how do we test for that? First of all, I think it's best just to go to your doctor and rule out other issues. Maybe it's their hearing. Maybe they have an auditory processing issue. Maybe there's something going on once the sound comes into the brain. Is it going in and out of sequence? That could be an issue. So you want to visit your doctor and talk about your concerns. And then you'll discuss some of your concerns with the teacher and make notes about those areas of weakness. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given when my son started struggling was keeping a file of samples of what was happening and the kind of work I was seeing coming home, so that when we decide to go to the educational evaluation route or a neuropsychologist, I have samples of what he truly struggles with. So that's some of the pre-work you need to do, but you have to get an official diagnosis and test done by an educational evaluation assessor kind of thing, or a neuropsychologist. And there's several different tests there, and what they all prefer is different across the board. Right. But there's tests like the Woodcock-Johnson, the WISC, there's the Wyatt, the MFACT. I made some notes about some of the other ones. And then there's the CMAT. But one that's fairly new on the scene that I personally really like was developed by Dr. Stephen Pfeiffer, Pfeiffer with an F, by the way, and he developed it for PAR testing. What I like about the FAM is what it's called, Pfeiffer's Assessment for Mathematics, the FAM, is that he recognizes there's actually 3 types of dyscalculia. There's one that affects procedural, and that's the one it's called, the procedural index. There's the verbal, and then there's the semantic. So procedural is, can the student follow a sequence of steps? The verbal is it the language? So a lot of our students with dyslexia have verbal dyscalculia because of their language issues. And then there's semantic dyscalculia. This is their facts, their math facts, the details of math, their alignment and directionality, but also what falls in this category is their visual and spatial reasoning, which a lot of students with dyslexia have really high visual and spatial reasoning. So what I like about Pfeiffer's test here is that we're able to look at those subtypes, and within those 3 main areas, we can pinpoint particular strengths of the student and also their weaknesses. And then you can use those strengths to build the weaknesses, which I think is really important. A lot of our students with dyslexia, they feel like I can't do anything right. Oh, I'm struggling with reading and math,
Yeah.
But they have inherent strengths, which I mentioned, the visual spatial. So we do a lot of visual spatial work in our multisensory method, and that is a strength to them. And we can apply it to those procedural steps, the verbal steps, to help them really grasp what's happening with math.
Wow. Okay. Well, excellent. So there is a test for that.
There is a test for that.
A couple of them, but it sounds like
Yeah.
the latest one is very detailed. Like it can narrow it down to the 3 different types of dyscalculia, which I didn't know there were 3
Absolutely.
different types. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, and so if an assessor happens to be watching this, I would encourage you to go over to PAR testing and go check it out. I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing over there, and I hope it gains speed in the assessment world.
Yeah. So when did it come out? Like how old is it?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the number, what
But
year
maybe
it came out.
within the last 5 years-ish.
Yeah, I think so.
So relatively new. Okay.
Relatively new. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask some of our friends who are diagnosticians, evaluators, like,
Right.
what do you know about this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us about multisensory math and like the history, like give a little bit of a history behind it, where it originated from, any research.
Yeah,
Give
absolutely.
us the rundown.
I'll give you the quick rundown.
Yeah.
So, as you know, in the 80s and 90s, it was the reading wars. We're figuring out how the brain really learns how to read, and we're so thankful for Dr. Shaywitz's work in this area. And it had a lot of hyperattention. And then in the 90s, a French researcher named Dehaene, he uncovered that math is best learned when we're applying the CRA approach, which means concrete, so things you can touch with your hands, representational, some people call it pictorial, but pictures, and then to the abstract, which is just the numbers. And this is one of the reasons that we started seeing a big emphasis on hands-on math in the Common Core curriculum. And not curriculum, in the standards, I should say. It's not a curriculum, it's standards.
Yeah.
They wanted to put more emphasis that we should be teaching our students to understand math at a deeper level and not just computational, which that was one of the things I actually really love about the Common Core standards is it goes with the research. Now, how those different curriculums get developed by big publishing houses, everyone interprets it a little bit differently, which is where the confusion comes in with families, and it's frustrating. But all of the methods we use are based on this research. And there's several people out there that are teaching multisensory math, such as Wooden or Mortensen Math, or Making Math Real is really popular in California. However, very expensive to become trained in it. And I personally decided to be trained by Marilyn Zecher, whose work is coming more forth in the light. But what I love about Marilyn's method is she really paired that language piece with the math research. And together, it's magical what we're able to achieve with the students, because we're using the language of the child and we're using the language of the teacher, but we're also teaching the language of mathematics. And so it's very approachable to a student. They're able to tie and understand. It's not uncommon in our math lessons to be doing a word study, some etymology to understand the words of math.
Yeah, because it's a whole separate language, math. I mean, when the student learns math, they're learning a whole new language, like Spanish or French, right?
Foreign language.
Foreign language is foreign.
It really is.
So.
It's completely foreign to them. And going back to that example I gave earlier about teaching them that is means equal, of means to take part of, this is really important for them to see how it breaks down. And now they understand you can't skip over those words. They're really important. They change the whole dynamic. So I love that piece from Marilyn. It's really changed how we teach. And we do have students. We had a student the other day. It was pretty cute. His teacher was doing some etymology, and he messages her privately since we work online. And he says, "What in the world? Is this a grammar class or is this math?" You know, which I just thought was really cute, but a testament to it was really important. We break the words down and make it accessible to the student. So for a quick example, in case you're wondering what that looks like, if we look at the word periscope, we have the word peri at the beginning, and we can show the kids. A periscope allows us to do what if you're in a submarine? It allows us to look around. What about your peripheral vision? If I wave my hands to the side and I just look straight forward, I can see around, right? And then we tie it to perimeter, has that root word peri in it, which means the distance around the shape. And perimeter and area is a big one for kids. They always mix it up. But breaking down the language of math helps them tie something to it and makes it more accessible to them, and they'll remember the difference now between perimeter and area.
Okay. And so that's part of the multisensory part of it.
That's part of the multisensory method, yes.
And do you guys also use like some tactile type stuff, like they do with some of the dyslexia interventions?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look in my background back here, there's some craft sticks at the very top. We use craft sticks to teach place value. Craft sticks are great because as the bundle gets bigger and bigger and you have 1,000, we send our students 1,000 sticks. It has mass and it has weight. Whereas a base 10 block is usually made of plastic and it doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't have weight. And so carrying around 1,000 base 10 blocks doesn't feel very different. Whereas carrying around 1,000 craft sticks has a completely different sensation to it. And, they're really cheap, they're affordable, but they allow us to teach a lot of really helpful concepts in math. And so we use subitizing is the way we find patterns. There's a lot of research on how important subitizing is. So you can see behind me, we've got these domino and dice patterns. Those are huge. The brain can only identify quickly quantities up to 4, and then after that, it needs to be in a pattern. And anything above 6, you actually need to do combinations of patterns. And so we teach students those because the number itself is too abstract, but paired with the subitizing, with the dice, with the domino, the number makes sense to them now. And they have a visual they can hang on to in their mind.
Gosh, okay.
That's how I got my math skills better, was playing dominoes.
I love dominoes. Dominoes.
So, Stephen, have you noticed, though, when you're playing with dominoes, the patterns that are really large, they're kind of strange numbers, that you start ignoring the pattern and you pay attention to the color?
No.
When I play dominoes,
mine are just black and white, though. I don't have
No,
I'm
to the point that I can tell you what you have in your hand when I'm playing.
Oh, he's pretty good then.
That's great. So for most students, that's not the case. Above 6, they're having to onesie twosie count, and that's inefficient. Counting's inefficient. So we want to teach the brain to start seeing patterns so they can recognize numbers quicker. And so if you notice your child just starts saying purple, it's because they don't want to count it anymore. And that's difficult for them. And that makes sense because that's not what the brain necessarily wants to do. But yes, you're right. With lots of play, you could learn those patterns. However, most people don't play dominoes enough to get to that point.
Oh, we played dominoes all the time. That was like what we did growing up with my grandparents and my great aunt. So they were I don't know, domino sharks. I don't know. I mean, they would like slap
yeah.
their domino. Your turn. Come on.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, it got very
We had music playing and slapping dominoes and
then right, you know.
washing the dishes. That's what you call
The
when
graveyard.
When you, well, yeah, when you
The
mix the
bones.
dominoes up,
Oh, you
wash the bones, wash them.
Wash the bones.
Wash 'em.
Mix them up good. It was fun. Yeah,
That's
that's a
super
good one.
fun.
That's a good math like game. I mean, I
It
need
is
to
a
play
perfect game to
dominoes with
play.
my kids more often. You know, I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
So-
yeah.
When you're looking at your average student, I mean, who benefits from a program like what you're providing?
Well, honestly, I believe it's appropriate for all learners. I mean, one thing that excites me about the dyslexia reading programs out there, I get excited about lots of schools are starting, no, I shouldn't say lots, but there are schools that are adopting that method because it works for everyone. And the same is true with multisensory math. It works for everyone. It's appropriate for everybody. But it's essential for those kids that have dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, and sometimes even autism. And that's really important that we use this method with them, give them as much tactile experience as we can, and support them in learning the procedural parts of math, because those algorithms that we all grew up doing, right? Our math growing up was really heavy on procedures, but you may not have known what you were really doing. We want students to use those algorithms in the future, but understand on a deeper level what's happening, to understand and generalize how that's working. But the algorithms are efficient. We want to do things that are efficient in math. But the way we get to that point is through those multisensory experiences. So it's appropriate for all kids, and I hope that it shows up in more classrooms, especially in the middle and the high school. A lot of those teachers throw it out the window because they don't think they have enough time to do something like that. But I would argue it's essential for a lot of your students that need that hands-on that they didn't get when they were younger. It's a really appropriate technique for lots of students.
So wait, hold up for a second. So in my mind, when we went through all this, it was, I was thinking this, you know, math for middles. I don't know why I thought this, but I thought it was mainly for elementary. But you're saying it can be all the way up to high school, that
Yes.
this intervention, or, you know, multisensory math is all the way up through algebra,
Yeah,
or
all the way up. Yes.
or higher, or
Mhm.
or does it stop at algebra, or algebra
You could
2?
take it, the way it looks different as you go higher and higher. So in algebra, we're using algebra tiles, which I can link to in the show notes if you'd like. But algebra tiles are similar to like base 10 blocks. There are manipulatives that are available for algebraic concepts. As you go higher and higher, it starts to change, and the multisensory part of it looks different. You're still breaking down that language. You're still doing the etymology, but now you're color coding things that are abstract. Maybe you're color coding that this is a square, and you're color coding that this is a square root. That piece helps our students with dyslexia, ADHD, and autism especially to slow down and see the parts, because they tend to skim it really fast and they miss important things like negatives. Oh, that had a square. And so we start color coding a whole lot more and writing out the procedural steps to the side. So that's how multisensory starts to change over time, but it's appropriate to pull out those manipulatives even when you're in high school. So an example of this would be factoring. Now, a lot of people have their own cute techniques for factoring. You know, we can foil and do reverse foiling and all of that. However, if we tie it to something that they learned when they were younger, which is area multiplication, we can tie that same idea to factoring in the secondary level. And so we can back up, show them how area multiplication works with some manipulatives, and then jump forward to what they're doing with factoring with the variables right now, and it makes a whole lot more sense to them. They understand they're finding the side lengths in this equation. They don't understand what they're doing when it's all abstract. And so that's why it's appropriate to do multisensory math even at the middle school and high school level.
Wow. So do you guys have like pre-calculus and calculus and all
We
that?
we do have staff that can go that high, yes. And right now we have some group programs, a bunch of middle school classes actually that run during the day. We have homeschoolers and students who are in the public school sector that come to us because their parents were awesome advocators and they could get them in. And so our plan personally is we're going to add a grade level every year. And we hope to arrive at pre-calculus. It'll take us probably 5 years to get to that point, but we'll keep adding grade levels as we go. But we do have people that can do the one-to-one right now.
Okay. Okay. And so, so I guess we kind of discussed this already, but what is the appropriate age, or what age can a child start doing
Sure.
multisensory math?
So they really could do it at any age at home. But if they want to work with us, we take people around third grade, 8 years old, and we'll take them all the way up. We do have a few college students, so we can serve them for a long period of time and support them the way their brain is wired. But we definitely don't have students that stay that whole period. But we do have students that do come in and want to stay, even though in our definition, they don't really need us anymore. They're competent, but they stay because they like it. They like having that net to catch them.
Okay.
But you can start anywhere from 8 all the way up to 18, and we would be able to find someone on our staff that could help your child.
Okay. And what's the average stay, I guess? If you're trying to get them caught up, closing that educational gap in math.
So it depends on a couple of different things. It depends on their mindset as a student. And that was another piece of research I didn't get to mention, but I'll mention it really quickly. Joe Bowler from Stanford University talks about mathematical mindsets. And so we know that if a student comes to us and they're really down on themselves, don't think they have the ability to do math, it's going to take us a little longer. But if they come to us with a can-do attitude, I can learn this, they're going to show me how, their progress is a lot faster. Sometimes that anxiety can really prevent the student from learning, which makes sense. When we look at how the brain learns, everything's processed emotionally first. And if they're feeling threatened that math is unsafe, the progress is slower. With that being said, though, usually when they come to us, it only takes a month or so before they start seeing, okay, these people are safe. I can ask my really dumb questions because they all think they have really dumb questions, and they're not going to be mad at me or think I'm stupid. They will answer my questions. And so their attitude starts to change. So students, we can see they come to us maybe sometimes 3 to 5 grade levels behind, just depends on how far behind they are. But within about 9 months time, we can usually move them 1, sometimes 3 grade levels in a 9-month period. But they stay because they're still behind their peers. And so I would say on average, a student will stay anywhere from that 9-month mark. So we'll say a year to 3 years out. But then again, we have students that refuse to leave. They just want to stay, even though they're, fine. They could be just fine on their own.
Okay. And so I know we had talked in our phone conversation. My hearing,
Took off.
Yeah, it turned off for a sec. And anyways, I know that we had in our phone conversation previously that we talked about education for administrators and teachers. Do you think this is something that public schools could do? Or if maybe they already are in some public schools? Or can you talk a little bit to that?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, let me just state kind of a sad fact. Here's the honest truth. Many of the teachers doing elementary math, the elementary teachers, they really can't pass a 6th grade math test. I'm not saying all of them, but there's a large chunk of them that can't pass that 6th grade math test. And that's a huge problem, because most likely they've got some math anxiety themselves from trying to learn it as a child and it didn't go well. And Dr. Bowler, Joe Bowler, that I mentioned, when she was studying about how our math attitudes can get passed on to people, she proved that these teachers are indeed passing on their math anxiety to their students, which is not good. So I really think if we want the biggest bang for our buck, going to those college preparatory schools and teaching multisensory math to the students going through teacher training would be such important work really important because it will not only change them, they're going to find they can do math. It just needs to be done a different way, which will in turn affect how they teach math to their students. But then more students are having a much more appropriate math education. Their teachers feel confident, they understand. There's a lot of teachers walking around saying, I can teach a student how to add two fractions together, but I don't really know why it works. I can teach them the procedure, but I don't get it. And so again, multisensory math is appropriate for all learners, even at the college level. And that's something that my mentor and I have noticed, that when people go through the training, they're having lots of aha, oh, that's why that works. And they're understanding on a much deeper level because of multisensory math. So I really think it's worth it for administrators to invest in that training for their staff, but also for colleges to look deeper, harder at it, because the research is out there. And it's surprising to me that so many universities are slow to adopt what we know works in research, the CRA approach. Why aren't we teaching our staff to do this with their students at all levels, not just elementary, but at all levels?
I think that's valid. I was like,
Do you, what other recommendations do you have for parents working with their struggling math students at home?
Yeah, there's so many things you can do. I'm sure a lot of you right now are feeling weighed down by the responsibility of teaching your child their math facts. So one thing that we know, research has proven this, Dr. Bowler is part of this, math facts take a long time to develop. And often teachers have it, this narrow amount of time and we're learning all the facts. But really what our students with dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, and autism need is less facts over time. And they need lots of time to use these math facts. So you at home, first of all, give yourself a pass. It's okay. I know the teachers are frustrated and they want your kid to have them memorized, but more flashcards in this case is not going to solve the problem. I'm against flashcards altogether. Like, let's just not drill and kill our kids. That's just not effective. So instead, what I'd advocate for you to do is pick up this book. It's $35 on Amazon. It's called The Dyscalculia Solution. Again, your child doesn't need to have dyscalculia in order for it to be effective. It's effective for everyone. But the book is full of games and methods that you can use at home with your young learners to teach them those math facts, to teach them the basics of number. But I will warn you, they are two British ladies, so their terminology is a little bit different. It's maths with an S. Instead of calling it ones, they call it units. So just FYI, like the terminology is slightly different, but the effects of it and applying it would be the same. So we'll link to that for sure so families can go and pick up that book.
sure.
And then as far as us, we're actually developing a class that's all about math facts to help these families because they're getting so much misinformation from the teachers because the teachers really don't know how to help a student with a different learning style or preference here. They just know to do what they saw, drill and kill, earn the ice cream scoops. But
I
we have
hated the ice cream scoops. I'm sorry. That is a personal, I almost threw the iPad through the window.
What is ice cream
Oh,
scoops?
you don't even want to know. I mean, my daughter was doing it, and this is just a side note, and I'm sorry. It's you mentioned it, and it clicked anger. But my daughter, so there's this program, math program, and everybody thinks it's wonderful, right? Well, you have these different math games, right? And so she chose. There's a lily pad game too, and that one was okay. But it got to this math scoop or the ice cream scoop game. So the customer comes in. And you have to solve a problem because the customer wants vanilla, but then they also want pistachio and chocolate and with a cherry on top. So you have to build their ice cream scoop, but you can't get the scoop on the cone until you've solved the problem. And then it's going this way, and then the customer usually, in my case, and I'm decent at math, the customer usually leaves and they like throw their change down on the ground, or they get huffy and leave the ice cream parlor, and then you have to start with the next customer who's already anxious and mad because you're spent so much time on the last customer. And I'm like, oh my god, all these customers are leaving. And it's just really that was really stressful for me. My daughter was like crying, so I was like, give it here, I'm going to try give this a go.
So repeat after me: Dominos.
Dominoes. Yeah.
Dominos.
Teach your kid to
Dominoes.
wash some bones.
Wash some bones. That's more fun.
Right.
But,
And then
oh
you get
my
to throw
gosh.
dominoes at your kid when you're mad at him.
Yeah, and that's legal in
Sit down.
Domino's, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, oh my gosh, ice cream scoops. Lordy,
Yeah.
lordy.
And again, you're proving the point that all learning's processed emotionally, right? So that game is agitating you and causing anxiety, which prevents the learning from even happening.
Yeah.
So just skip it.
I
Just
did. I
shelf
did.
it.
I didn't know I could until about like a couple of months later. Like we were struggling through this every couple of nights. And so a couple of months later, I was like, teacher, I personally can't do this anymore. And I'm not going to allow my child to go through this torture either. Do you have something else? you know, because we're not feeling it.
Exactly. So, yes, we love games, but not necessarily in the form of an app because that happens. And also, sometimes the kids gets more interested in what does this button do? What does this button do? What does this button do? Instead of actually practicing the math facts. So we took Dr. Bowler's research about how important it is to teach conceptually what's happening with the multiplication. And we developed some card games. They're not flashcards. I always get really upset when people tell me it's a flashcard. It's not a flashcard. Don't you dare call it a flashcard. So I wanted to show you, it's using that idea of subitizing. You can see really quickly, oh, that's 5, and the quantity has a 9 in it. And this is a math fact card. This is 9 times 5. So it's interesting to see our students using this. This is using a strategy called
I'll back it up just a
decomposition.
little bit. There,
Let me
it
back it.
focused. It
There we
focused.
go. So this is decomposition, and this allows a student understand how the numbers are broken up and that there's multiple ways of arriving at the answer. It doesn't have to be death by drill and kill, memorization, flashcards. We can avoid all of those things with some simple games. And it's not available to purchase yet. I hate to tell families that. I've got lots of people hounding me to get it done. But I'm hopeful by the first week in October it will be available and
Oh, so
families can
soon.
purchase it. Yes,
Yeah,
soon.
Okay, great.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm working on as soon as we hang up today to finish bringing all of it to fruition and finished product. And what's unique about it is because I know there's so many parents that either have dyslexia or they have a child with dyslexia, there will be written instructions, but we're going to give you video instructions instead so your child can watch it, see how to play it, and have a little bit of independence there to play the game. Plus, I think parents are probably more likely to watch the instructions and read them themselves as well.
Right.
So we're really excited about that. I think it's going to be helpful. We've been testing it with our families. They love it. They love the games. They're having a lot of fun. Their child is learning their math facts.
Excellent.
No, we want written instructions. That way we can cheat. No, see, that's what it says. No, see, it says here that you have to add, then subtract. I win.
I win.
I win.
I see how you play.
Oh yeah, hey,
That's
we
fun.
got to set the rules at the beginning of the
That
game.
daddy always wins.
Hey, as long as we're all okay with daddy always wins,
Okay.
we can have a fun
I
game.
love it.
So, Adrienne, you developed like a web page, or tell us about that real quick. It was like I'm looking on my notes, but I don't. To tell viewers about the research or your program and the helpful things that they can do, parents can do at home with their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned so many things and it's a lot to keep track of. So I thought, you know what, let's just make a web page. So if you go to Math for Middles, FOR,
Okay.
FOR in the middle, middles with an S for like middle schoolers, mathformiddles.com/empower. That's a page just for your listeners, and it will have everything we talked about today. And I will be adding additional things as we go so that you don't have to go scour my website and try to find what I was talking about. I put it all in one place for you, so it was super easy
That's
to
so
find.
awesome. You're kind of a tech person, aren't you?
I am. I mean, that's what we do. It's online tutoring, right? We try to make it as easy as possible for our people.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm going to go look at it as soon as the show's over. See what.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much, Adrienne, for coming on the show. We really enjoyed having you. I know a little bit more now about dyscalculia.
You even know how to say it.
And I'm wow. I'm finally can
I
say
cracked
it.
myself up.
I think it depends on what end of the country you live on. I hear
Yeah.
dyscalculia. I hear
Oh, really?
dyscalculia. Depends on where you live.
Yeah,
And you guys
oh,
are in the
okay.
middle. So
Count
I
So we
Chocula.
hear it both, or Count Chocula.
Count Chocula.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you know what we're talking about.
You know how to spell it.
Yeah. Well, continue your great work. That's good. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the end of every show, we always end it with saying if you as a parent are seeing struggles with your student and you really understand that it's more than my child's just not understanding, there's something that's just not clicking, we always recommend that you start the process, get your child evaluated through your school. And the way that you do this, you can go to our website, www.empowerdyslexia.info, and we have templates on there that you can download, fill in your information, turn it into your school counselor, and get the entire process started. You'll be happy to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And if your child does need services, they're going to be less frustrated in school and receiving the support that they need at that point, they'll be able to flourish. And that's what it's about. It's about getting our children the right services that they need, whether it's gen ed, whether it's special education. And I'll say the special education is a service, not a place.
Not a place.
Remember that.
Yeah.
So we need to
Services can be pulled out or pushed in.
We need to dispel that myth and do away with the whole stigma behind special education.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So-
Because that's only hurting our kids when you think of it that way.
Right.
Or hurting your child even. It could potentially. So, okay. Well, you guys, is there anything else?
I think that's
I think that's it, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you here next week.
See you there.